Senator Win, um, any concerns about the items vetoed by President Marcos?
Yes, actually, I have. But before I answer that, let me just explain the items under the unprogrammed allocation. The unprogrammed appropriation cannot be taken as a whole because it has a lot of line items. In fact, in the National Expenditure Program, there are 11 line items. The most controversial there will be the SAGIP lump sum funds. Because in the past, the SAGIP lump sum funds have been used to fund flood control projects. I'll give you a very specific example. In 2024, the SAGIP lump sum fund funded 80 billion worth of flood control projects. That lump sum fund, we took it out. That's why if you see the Senate version of the GAB, it doesn't have the SAGIP lump sum funds anymore. So I have to say that because that's the most controversial.
Okay.
The other vetoed items, 9 vetoed items, 7 of which are in the National Expenditure Program. Ibig sabihin, it was originally part of the executive's budget. And the 2 were added during the budget process. So all of those were actually coordinated and included in the original proposal of the executive.
So what, in that case, why did the president veto it? It seems incongruous.
Well, the 3, just to answer you, Cess, no, the out of the 9 that were vetoed, I'm concerned with the 3, no, and this is the RACE program, the CARS program, and the GOP counterpart for foreign assisted project. The RACE and the CARS program, these are arrears that we have to pay to Toyota and to Mitsubishi because in the past we enticed them to come to the Philippines to set up shop in exchange for tax breaks, and we haven't paid those tax breaks. That's why we included in the unprogrammed allocations 4.2 billion to pay all of those arrears. The other concern is the GOP counterpart to foreign assisted projects because the way foreign assisted projects work, you have the loan and you have the GOP counterpart. So we need to put up those GOP counterparts in order to fulfill our part of the project.
Right. Why was there no discussion on why it had to be part of unprogrammed funds and not included within the budget itself?
Well, one of the reasons why unprogrammed funds are used is the timing. Normally, unprogrammed funds come around second quarter. The bulk will come around third and fourth quarter. So if you don't need the funds during the first quarter, it's better to put it in the unprogrammed so that you can conserve your cash in the first quarter. So it's a cash management method.
Right.
Because if you don't need the cash during the first quarter, why put it in the program fund? Sayang. No, you can use that funds for other requirements that need cash requirements during the first quarter. So it's really a cash management strategy.
It may be that, but Congressman Erice has pointed out that the Supreme Court, in fact, in its decision on the PhilHealth matter, pointed that out. Was there any discussion in the BICAM about the potential unconstitutionality of it?
Well, since the unprogrammed appropriations have been there time immemorial.
Yeah, true.
And I know there is a pending case right now. I understand there's a pending case right now lodged in the Supreme Court against the unprogrammed appropriation. So until that is not yet resolved, there's no legal prohibition to use unprogrammed appropriation. So, well, if the Supreme Court, if someone will file a case or the Supreme Court will resolve that existing case, then at least we will be guided on how to move forward.
But that's a thing, Senator. Like you mentioned, the RACE program that was vetoed and the CARS program that was vetoed. And you said in your press con earlier, this parang ano siya eh, it gives us a bad reputation to investors, right? And because unprogrammed appropriations have a really bad reputation right now, as to what Seth said, Congressman Erice last night told us, bakit hindi na lang daw i-supplemental budget? Bakit kailangan
As you all know, whenever you go to Congress, it takes time. if you do a supplemental budget, you have to file a bill in the lower house, in the upper house. You have to do the first, the second, the third reading. So by the time, if you are in dire need of an allocation or appropriation, the minimum that it will take probably 3 to 6 months to get that supplemental appropriation. And that's one logic why unprogrammed allocations or a program appropriations came about, because of the efficiency for unprogrammed appropriations. So this unprogrammed appropriation goes through Congress. So in other words, it gets scrutinized by the lower house, it gets scrutinized by the upper house, and we can scrutinize these projects for as long as it takes. So in other words, if there are items that can be abused, we can remove it. Hence, we remove the sagip lump sum allocation. It's the Senate that removed it because we saw that in the past it has been abused by channeling funds to questionable projects like flood control projects.
So in order to fund an unprogrammed appropriation, it will also go through scrutiny of both houses of Congress.
Yes, correct. It's not automatic. But whenever the executive proposes unprogrammed allocations in the National Expenditure Program, it will get approved. I'll give you a very specific example. The original line items in the unprogrammed funds are 11 line items. The Senate reduced it to 7. And we removed the sagip allocation or the sagip lump sum. So in other words, we can actually eliminate it to 0. But because of the sheer size of the unprogrammed, we're talking about 243 billion. If we move that to program allocations, we need to remove 243 billion in the program allocations. Saan natin kukunin yun? No? So it cannot be done during the legislative budget process. It has to be done earlier on so that the executive can prioritize which projects and programs to remove and which projects and programs to include in the NEP.
Well, Senator, going back to your concerns on the items that President Marcos vetoed, including the CARS program, is there still any legal pathway for our government to honor these obligations despite the veto, given that the biggest implication of that is our credibility as a country in honoring these commitments?
That's a very good question. In fact, the BOI texted me yesterday when they found out that it was vetoed. Because if you listen to the budget hearings of the DTI, and you will hear it there from no less than the Secretary and the BOI pleading that let's pay the investors, let's pay Toyota and Mitsubishi because nakakaya, una. Pangalawa, it's our reputation on the line. How can we attract investors to set up shop, to set up a factory here if we cannot honor our commitments? So it was them who pleaded. That's why we included it at least in the unprogrammed, because it's a non-cash allocation. So to answer your question straight, there are other ways. No? One, the president can use other funds to pay those arrears. For example, the contingency fund. The other one is to come up with a creative accounting mechanism so that the BIR will record its payment and it will free up Toyota and Mitsubishi from paying these arrears.
Okay. Well,
And that's not skirting
It's creativity.
accounting creativity. Okay, let's go to, Senator Amy was part of the BICAM, and then now she released this video about mga giniling-giniling. What's your response to her
Well, that's her
video?
opinion, and even though she's part of the BICAM, she's a vice chairman of the Finance Committee. She handles other agencies, but that's her opinion, and we respect that. But as far as the committee is concerned, we debated this very long. In fact, originally we only scheduled 3 days for the open BICAM, but it took us 6 days, including the signing. So it was a very debated, very
Vigorously
heavily debated process. In fact, we finished 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning discussing all of these things. So it was not sneaky. No, nothing happened.
But how transparent
It
was
was
it?
open to everyone.
Because some of your discussions were, in small groups, no longer in the live stream.
Well, a lot of this discussion, just like in the committees, just like in plenary, there are times that we need to talk about things so that we will have cooler heads. If we continue to magbabangayan kami all throughout the night, it will never end. So we need to calm down a little bit, talk with cooler heads, and then revive again the discussions. But all of those discussions were live and shown to the public. So walang sneaky na nangyari.
Well, now, Senator, the budget is done, but that's just one part of it. Of course, corruption can still come out in the implementation of the
Correct.
GAA, right? Have you
Yeah.
guys? I know that's kind of not in your purview, but
Yeah.
in terms of what Congress can do to put in safeguards, what have you guys done differently this time around?
That's a very good question. We need to also distinguish where the budget process ends and the implementation starts. Now, the budget process after the signing is done. No? So we already transmitted to the executive the budget, and the president signed it yesterday. So the next 12 months will be the implementation. And then in Congress, both the House and the Senate, part of its inherent powers is to conduct oversight. So we plan to convene for the first time actually, the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on Public Expenditures, and we will monitor big ticket items. We will monitor how items are being spent, how items are not spent, no? Because another big sickness, sakit ng gobyerno, is underutilization. There's so many items that are not being spent. No, they will request for funds, but they will not implement it. So we will also look at utilization. We will also look at procedure on how these funds are being spent. So the oversight committee will be convened, and we will use that as a mechanism to monitor the implementation of the budget.
And will you let CSOs and budget watchdogs into this process with the oversight function of Congress? Because a lot of them, as early as now, are saying they're soft pork, hard pork, and all of that.
Well, let me just say that in this bill, Senator Lacson also introduced what we call now the anti-EPAL provision, where politicians are barred from joining distribution of assistance and aid. That prohibition actually only happens during election, but because of this general provision, now it will happen every single day. So that's another safeguard that important assistance or important aids will not be politicized.
But Senator, speaking of that anti-EPAL provision, some budget watchdogs are saying it still lacks teeth. It's insufficient in a sense that there are no clear penalties. Ano ba yung magiging penalty kung sakaling ang makita
Pauline,
na may...
this is a budget bill. It's not an anti-EPAL bill. No? So we cannot put penal provision in a budget bill, or else lahat ng mga provisions doon magkakaroon ng penal provision. No? So the penal provision exists in other laws. That's why this anti-EPAL bill will ride on other laws. But since it's included in the appropriation law, what will happen now is before all of these amounts will be appropriated, the anti-EPAL provision should be considered. But when there is a violation, another law will be triggered.
But when it comes to the mechanisms of this anti-EPAL provision, Senator, so it will be up to the agencies and the departments to craft them, to implement them?
Correct. They have to come up with the guidelines. It's also in the general provisions that they're mandated to come up with the guidelines. So it's not empty, it's not empty air. They have to come up with concrete guidelines on how to implement the general provision. That's also part of our oversight to make sure that that provision gets operated.
But honestly, Senator, how pork-free is this law, the budget?
It's pork-free.
Super
It's
pork-free?
pork-free because-
Walang soft pork?
It's pork-free because it's the executive who will now implement it. It's not the legislative branch who will implement it. It's the executive who will implement it. And with the guidelines that will come out, then it will be a fairer, efficient, and clearer process on availing all of these projects, activities, and programs of the government.
Senator, watchdogs are flagging one program, though, and that's the Convergence and Special Support Programs, or the CSSP under DPWH. They say it's still prone to flexibility, and insertions and reallocations can happen there. Maybe you'd like to clarify that, Senator?
That's not true. All the projects in DPWH are lined item with station numbers and coordinates. So there's no lump sum in DPWH.
Okay. If we can move on to another topic, mainit na usapan ngayon, Senator, no, yung MOOE or yung break bonus, so-called, of the lower house of congressmen. May ganun din po ba sa upper house?
Wala sa upper house na ganyan.
So
I don't even know kung merong ganyan sa lower house. I don't want to comment on that. That's the concern of the lower house. But in the upper house, walang ganyan.
So your MOOEs are disbursed in a different, kumbaga, timeline, in a different manner from the lower house?
The way we operate is the committee itself. Like kami, sa Committee on Finance, we have a budget, and that includes the MOE. So we use the MOE to buy, diba, pag nag-hearing kami, normally lunch to dinner. So we buy lunch and dinner. We also buy merienda for them. We also use that to, if we need to print materials, we use that MOE.
Or
But
senators,
it's not us personally who can use it for our own personal expenses. It's for the committee expense.
but you do get allowances if you chair a committee. Additional,
The committee,
over and above.
not me. I don't get any allowance. It's a committee that gets an allowance. It's a committee that gets the budget. That's why if you chair two committees, then you get two budgets for that committee.
Which is also, the chair has a free hand in spending that money.
For committee activities, not for personal activities. We have to qualify that. So, for example, the committee will conduct an ocular inspection. Like kami, no? In the oversight, we plan to conduct ocular inspection of irrigation projects. We can use those budgets to buy plane tickets, book a hotel, or pay for food. So those activities.
Okay, and speaking of committees, it's of course your first budget as Finance Committee Chairman. How would you assess what happened? And of course, the timing of it, right? In the middle of this whole scandal and all the pressure on you. If you were to grade yourself, 10 being the perfect score, what would you... the whole thing, learnings.
It's really a lot of stress because there's a time element. I have to explain that unlike other bills that you can have a hearing one to sawa. You can hear a bill 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, doesn't matter. In the Finance Committee, you have to finish it by end of the year, or else you'll have a reenacted budget. And the reenacted budget will destroy the economy. That's the problem. So we need to make sure that things are pushing forward. And so one of the biggest, ang daming learning process. So many things that we need to adjust. One of the things is timing. Typically, the budget is transmitted to Malacanang around second week of December. This time we transmitted it fourth week of December. That's why we had a 4-day reenacted budget. So that's something that we need. That's something that should not happen anymore. It's too risky to have that.
Did you achieve all that you intended to do when you assumed the position?
Insofar as making it corruption free, and insofar as making it transparent and making it detailed, yes. I'll give you a concrete example. For irrigation projects and farm-to-market roads, before it was all lump sum. So you'll see a budget worth 30 billion for irrigation, but you don't know where the projects are. That one we painstakingly itemized close to about 30 billion worth of irrigation projects. And these are small projects. We're talking about 5 million, 10 million. And we painstakingly included coordinates and station numbers in those projects. So that's why if you look, if you have time to look at the annexes, you'll see all the projects itemized with coordinates and station numbers. And all of these are uploaded. Don't take my word for it. Visit the transparency portal, the Senate budget transparency portal. Everything is there.
Well, it's actually a complete 180, Senator, coming from the 2025 budget, which a lot of people said it was the most corrupt budget in the country's history, to now having what they call the cleanest budget, at least in recent years. But when it comes to transparency, Senator, the budget last year was historic. The budget process was historic in a sense that it was open for the first time to the public, the BICAM process. But in your opinion, are there still areas for improvement that we can do for the next budget cycles?
A lot pa, Sean. Like I said, the timing and the calendar, we need to improve. One of the things that we will also conduct in the oversight committee is the budget process itself prior to the NEP. Kasi the NEP is only half of the budget process. Prior to it is also important, meaning how communities, civil society, local government units, how people can recommend projects and it will end up in the NEP. No? That process needs to be looked at also. And there's a process, there are a lot of guidelines. In fact, it's included in the local government code. But is it being followed? And is it efficient? So those are things that we will look at also. It's a technical matter, but it's also a matter between the legislative and the executive. But nevertheless, it's an important matter.
Senator Win Gatchalian, we thank you for joining us on The Big Story. You had the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee there. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Maraming salamat.